Hey guys, how the hell are you? Welcome back once again to Arnold Drinks. My name is Arnold, and tonight I drink. So this is something I've been a little curious about. Every time I go into one of my local haunts, I would always walk past this bottle and I'm like, that seems kind of interesting. It is a Texas company, Whitmeyer. This is a Rye, Whitmeyer's original whiskey, bourbon and rye. It does have a different proof per batch, so depending on which batch you end up purchasing, you might get a little bit different result. But this one is batch 18, 108.8 proof, 54.4%, and it says on the back that it is distilled, blended, and bottled by Whitmeyer's Distilling Company in Houston, Texas. Rye whiskey is distilled in Indiana. Hey, it's MGP Rye. And bourbon whiskey is distilled in Texas, probably their own original distillate, and Kentucky. So we've got a little bit coming from a few different worlds here. So let's go ahead and check this out and see what they came up with as far as how it's blending, what sort of notes that we're getting. So what's funny to me, initial nosing of this, I'm not really getting any rye character coming through. What I'm getting is something that is like dark maraschino cherry dominant in the aroma, which is not necessarily a bad thing at all. Makes me wonder how this would go into Manhattan. So a little bit of sort of a dark chocolate thing that's going on in there amidst the dark cherry note, but there's also a little bit of plum in there. There's like some sort of dark grape note that's in there that is a little odd. But then there's also this sort of citrusy note that's coming through. That is interesting. And that is also way different from the neck pour of this thing. As you can see, I've already killed off a fair amount of this bottle. And I swear, when I originally opened this bottle, that is not the impression I was getting. The neck pour of this thing was kind of indistinct, for lack of a better description. It was very separate, both in terms of the aroma and in terms of the overall flavor. Like I was picking up barely anything and it was from opposite ends of the spectrum. This seems more like a very, very tasteful melange happening on the aroma. Like there's a lot going on, it's blended, it's complex. And smelling from different parts of the glass, I'm actually getting a little bit more of an oaky character coming from sort of like sticking my nose down towards the bottom of the lip here. Quite a nice aroma now, finally. So, alright, cheers. Let's actually see what the palate's like. Oh, there's the rye. So first of all, should be noted, super tannic upon this sip. This is not my first whiskey of the day, but wow, that sucked like all the moisture out of my cheeks in a big hurry. Like it was almost instantaneous. There's kind of a bold dark cherry note that's in there. You're getting that rye spice, you're getting that cinnamon and slightly peppery note on the back end. A little bit of oak is coming through on the finish. The finish is doing that weird thing that I've noticed in a couple of whiskeys recently where it's like big and bold and then it tapers off dramatically, but then it lingers at kind of a low level. That's what this finish is doing. Like it's there, but it's very much tapered off and just kind of laying low. Let's go back in again. Super tannic. So that sort of Cabernet-like grape note is definitely in there a little bit. The same thing that I was getting on the aroma. It also might be playing havoc with me, those tannins, because that sort of dryness kind of is something that I associate with any number of great Cabernets that I've had. And that is definitely what I'm getting out of this. So maybe it's just playing tricks on me and it's kind of taking me back to a sort of Cabernet note a little bit. but there is definitely a dark fruit note that is very, very dominant in there. Almost like a really, really excellent bottle of Eagle Rare. Not that I've had too much Eagle Rare, but I have had one incredible sip at a bar that was like, wow, that's what everyone's been talking about. And that's kind of something that's coming out of this. That sort of dark cherry, almost plummy kind of note, a little bit of black cherry that's in there, I should say. Meanwhile, that dark chocolate note that I was getting a little bit on the aroma, it's a little bit more muted in the palate, but it is definitely still there. Let's go in again. It's really thick and viscous in the mouth too. Like, without knowing that this was 108, I would probably maybe guess that the proofage was a little bit higher. Not saying that it drinks hot, quite the contrary. It just drinks so viscous that you would think it's a higher proof, maybe 115 to 120 ballpark. But not getting a lot of ethanol out of that. I wasn't getting any in the aroma either, which is quite awesome. Like, I'm just getting a lot of dark fruit. There's like a citrus little tinge at the top of it. Like, the rye, more than anything, is coming through a little bit more on the finish, that sort of grainier note that kind of lingers a little bit. But I'm not getting a ton of rye in there. It's not assaulting me with any sort of peppery spiciness or anything like that. It's just there. It's just present. That is quite interesting, because even though this is a blue rye, I am feeling like this is leaning way, way, way more heavily on the bourbon side, which would make sense, since on the back it does say that the bourbons are distilled in Texas and Kentucky. Maybe it's a 2 to 3, maybe it's a 2 to 1 ratio, 2 bourbons to 1 rye, who knows? Maybe there's even more of something in there than the others. Maybe there's even more of one particular mash in there than the others, who knows? But I'm getting a lot of sweet, vanilla, creamy, lots of dark fruit notes in there. And then it almost seems like an afterthought. Here comes the spice. There's that dry tannic note that's in there. Most notes that I would associate with a rye, like the spearmint, that sort of baking spice, the cinnamon, the pepper, are just not as present as the dark fruit, for lack of a better description. Definitely not saying it's bad at all. It's just that if you're looking for something that's really, really balanced, kind of right down the middle, this isn't really doing that. It's leaning far more heavily to one side versus the other. But especially after having this thing sit on the shelf now for about a month and a half, that's kind of checking a lot of boxes for me. This is definitely shaping up to be a really fantastic bottle, especially considering that, if I remember right, I think I only paid $35 for it. Dude, I would pay $35 any day of the week for that. Like, especially when I love things like Lost Monarch from Redwood Empire, which is also a Burr rye. This is a much higher proofage. You get a lot more of those sweeter notes. To me, this is a lot more complex than Lost Monarch, and I would pay $35 for Lost Monarch any day of the week too. So now you throw this into the mix, dude, this is a no-brainer. If you see this thing for below 40 bucks, pick this up, because this is well worth that amount of money. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to this channel. Tons more of this content to come. And as always, remember, take what you do seriously. Do not take yourselves too seriously.